So in the 80s, there was a president named George Bush, and his wife was named Barbara Bush. She has a famous quote that I'd like to share with you today. She said this, Barbara Bush said this many years ago: "One thing will never change. Fathers and mothers, if you have children, they must come first. You must read to your children. You must hug your children. And you must love your children. Your success as a family, our success as a society, depends not on what happens at the White House, but what happens inside your house." It's true today, isn't it? We're all very concerned about what's going on all around us, nationally and the government and in our communities, this epidemic of drug addiction that is in our community. There's so many concerns. And one of the great concerns is what's going to happen to our children. The Bible says in 3 John that the Apostle John said, "I have no greater joy than that my kids, my children, are walking with the Lord." And is that our joy? Sometimes many of us are missing out on that joy that the Lord would have us because we see our children or our parents or our spouse, our loved ones nearest us, not believing in the Lord as our heart for them would be. I want to share some statistics with you today, if I may. There was the Barna Research Group does studies every quarter. They called 1,000 plus households in America, and they asked them several questions. They asked them 6 questions that kind of were to be a gauge as to whether the family or that individual who's answering the phone believes in what the Bible says. Here were the 6 questions. They asked them, does God exist? Is truth real and unchanging? Is Jesus the only way to heaven? Does God interact in the world today? And do Christians have a need to share Jesus with others? If a person responded and said yes to those 6 questions, then they recorded that. Now, I don't know if you can just guess, but of the Americans who believe in that all 6 of those questions, which would be a standard Christian worldview, is God exist? Is the Bible true? Is Jesus the only way to the Lord? Those kind of basic. The Bible's been saying those things for thousands of years. If the respondent believed in all 6, they would check a box and say this person has a biblical worldview. Guess what percent of people who are 75 and older have a biblical worldview? Well, it was 10% of Americans. But the 75-year-olds and older did something very well, because those generation that followed them, 55 and older, 55 to 75, that next generation, 10% of them as well held to a biblical worldview, praise God. Something happened with the next generation. When they asked those 37 to 55, those same 6 questions, only 5% responded affirmatively. 5% of Americans. Those aged 18 to 36 responded 2% in the affirmative. And so, do you see how my great-grandfather did a good job? And then my grandpa did I don't know if it's a matter of pointing fingers, but do you see the decline in belief biblically in our countrymen today? And the younger you get, the more likely you are to believe anything but the Bible. And this is what we want to look at today, because when we're reading Acts, here we are in our 10th study through the book of Acts. We see totally different things. There, it's not somebody believes, but their spouse and their kids think otherwise. It's just the opposite. Remember in chapter 10, we saw Cornelius. He hears the gospel for the first time, and he was a soldier who oversaw 100 other soldiers. And he gathers all of his household. He had servants, and he had children and a wife, and he gathers them all into a house. Peter declares the gospel, and the Bible says the Holy Spirit fell upon all of the house. Co-workers got saved. Children, spouse got saved. The kitchen help got saved. There's a huge revival that happened in the whole house, in the whole family. Same thing later on, Acts chapter 18. A guy named Crispus, he's the leader of a synagogue. He was very much a leader within the Jewish faith. He hears the gospel by Paul. And what happens? It says he and his household were baptized. Actually, in that situation with Crispus, it says they all believed, even better. And then, of course, in today's section, we're going to see two others. One's named Lydia. She sells purple garment or purple fabric in the city, and certainly had a house of her own, because in the text we shall find. So this is a busy woman. She hears the gospel on a Saturday morning at a prayer meeting. She's Jewish. It was a Jewish prayer meeting. Paul shares the gospel. She believes. Watch this. Her whole household believed with her. And then we meet another guy. He's a dungeon keeper, pretty salty guy, I presume. And yet when he hears, he just actually sees the gospel revealed through a man who's been beaten and yet has such grace in his heart. This dungeon keeper, this jail keeper comes to the faith, but not him alone. His whole household becomes believers. Now, of course, we know even God the Father, who walked with Adam, knew what it was to be a son, have a son who rebels. No person, no matter how perfect, ask Job. Oh, there's so many examples in the Bible. You can't make your children believe. But what we want to do is not give them a reason to disbelieve. We want to do everything we can to give our children, our spouse, our mom and dad, the cousins we love, the people nearest us, even our co-workers. We want to give those who know us best an opportunity to follow Jesus. And this way of living in Acts and the first believers, I believe, is closer to the way we need to be believing and living today. I'm going to share with you today 4 keys, 4 things that we observe in some of these in Lydia's life that we can take into our own life and use it as a way of gauging whether we have a contagious faith for our whole family. So we're going to discover different elements, 4 keys of having a contagious faith for our family. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, Lydia was a hero of old. Not because she was great, but she let you be great. Do the same in us. In your Son's name we pray. Amen. Well, let's dive on in. So we're going to begin in Acts 16. Would you turn there with me today, starting in verse 13? Acts 16, verse 13. And on the Sabbath day, we went out of the city to the riverside. This is, of course, Paul and his traveling party, the people who were going throughout Eastern Europe here. They're in the area north of Greece, and they're sharing the gospel with whoever will listen. And so on the Sabbath day, that was Saturday morning, they went to the riverside, it says, verse 13, where prayer was customarily made. And we sat down and spoke to the women who met there. And so these Jews evidently were so few in number that they didn't have a synagogue, perhaps, in that area of where they were living. And so they're gathering under the tree, under the shade of a tree near the river where it was cool, to just pray on a Saturday morning. Verse 14, again, this is Acts 16, verse 14. Now a certain woman named Lydia heard us. She was a seller of purple from the city of Thyatira who worshiped God. And the Lord opened her heart to heed the things spoken by Paul. Verse 15, and when she and her household were baptized, she begged us, saying, if you have judged me to be faithful to the Lord, come to my house and stay. And so she persuaded us. And so here, this first person, we want to kind of look at their life and how the faith changed their life. This first person we see is Lydia, this hero of old. And here's the first mark I want you guys to jot down about Lydia. She is truth changed. That's a new word, I just coined it. truth dash changed. You'll see what I mean in a second. So it says that the Lord opened her heart to heed the things spoken by Paul. So Paul, he welcomes himself to this prayer gathering on a Saturday. Hey, how you guys doing? I'm Paul. I'm from Tarsus, and have you guys heard about Jesus Christ? This is a bunch of Jews worshiping God. They had been reading since childhood about how God would command a sacrifice to be given, and the sacrifice, an innocent animal, it's done nothing wrong. But by this animal shedding its blood, the people would be forgiven. I mean, they've been a part of that 4 times a year at all of these feasts. They had been trained up that there must be a sacrifice for there to be forgiveness. And Paul declares to them, guess what? His name is Jesus. And he was alive and well and born in Bethlehem, and he lived a full life until he spoke the truth, and he showed us the way to the Lord. He is the Son of God. And then he gave his life on the cross as a lamb. He is the lamb sent from heaven. He is the Lamb of God. And by faith in him, all of your sins are forgiven, and you can have a relationship with God Almighty. And it clicked for some of them. For Lydia, we find, it not only clicked, but it changed her. The truth changed her. This is so important. She did not say, yep, I believe that, and went on her day. Believing in God is radically different than believing God. She believed God. Now she saw and she changed. Now, this is important. It says that she heeded the things spoken by Paul in her heart. In other words, she didn't do what many of us accept as being a conversion to Christ. Let me give you some examples. It's hard for us to see it within our own Christianity because we're so close to it. Many of us are Christians. I pray all of us be Christians today. It's hard for us to look at our own selves, so let's look at people outside of Christianity. For example, with Jehovah's Witness. For many years at Grace Built Church, I needed a job. When I was planting the church was very small, and so I had to have a job. And so I worked as a maid. I owned a small coffee shop in town. And I like to hire Jehovah's Witnesses, believe it or not, because the Jehovah's Witnesses were so very honest. I'm being absolutely honest with you, and it's to our shame that that's true. I found them to be very honest. They showed up very clean, and they did their tasks well. They were an honest group of people. And so I found myself hiring one and keeping that person on, and she would bring her other Jehovah's Witnesses friends, and they were just honest. Shame on us that we're not that way often. Nonetheless, I spoke to them several times about how they came into the Jehovah's Witness religion. And one girl said it like this. She came to the faith as a young adult. She came to the religion of Jehovah's Witness as an adult. And she said what happened was she was raised in a Christian home, but she had never met anyone like these Jehovah's Witnesses, she said. They, for example, had a very clean house. She says they took it really seriously. Their families were intact. The husband was still married to the wife. The kids were at home. She says she had never seen anyone like this. They were good students, and they just kept their families really together. And she says she had never experienced that before. She was drawn to the Jehovah's Witness religion because of the good things around it. I'll give you another example. You've probably heard of this. I think it's called Inixium. It was a secret society where celebrities would recruit people into a secret cult, but they wouldn't know it's a secret cult. They thought it was a kind of a self-help mechanism for success. Well, the leader was, having sexual relations with all these girls, and they're paying all this money. But what they did to get people into this secret society, a cult, is they would have important people reach out to other people who wanted to be important and wanted fame and success outwardly. And together, they would climb this cultish ladder. And now, of course, the leader is in prison, and I'm glad for that. He deserves to be there. Suffice it to say, those people were drawn not to the truth of that whatever secret society. They were drawn because they thought it would be a step up the success ladder. They thought they were getting to be friends with celebrities, and it was going to help them get to where they wanted to be. Now, look at these things. Is there any of that in your Christianity? I think for us, many of us in Christianity today, it applies to too many. No wonder. Are you that person who really, if someone were to look at your life, your kids or your spouse, and they were to say, oh yeah, my wife is a Christian, how do they know that? What do they look at your life and see that you're a Christian? If your parents looking at your newfound faith and they were to say they think you're a Christian, what would they be gauging that on? What's that being made, that decision being made on? What in your life is it that they're seeing that's making them feel you are a Christian? Sometimes for us, we hear in our community, well, my mom really likes the bell choir, and because she likes the bell choir, that's her thing. Or my dad really likes that old-timey music. He loves the old gospels, and that's his thing. Maybe for you it's, well, my mom reads those Christian novels. She loves a good Christian romance. Did you know there are such things? You can buy that. I don't recommend it. You can buy it. They'll take your money. And so my mom likes the Christian romances, maybe we say. And we let ourselves be known for some activity outward of the truth. You see, when you are marked because you love your Christian golf club, I know he's a Christian because he likes Christian golf. Well, he's all about worship. Ooh, he loves worship music. That's his thing. Well, she's got a lot of good Christian friends. She loves her Christian youth group. Wow, her youth group is everything. Watch this. If they take it away, is your Christianity go with it? If that church and its fancy youth group, or that pastor who you made much too much of, or that gospel music that's done away with and they decide to do music from the last 50 years instead, do you go your way in your faith with it? See, here's the problem. If you and I are marked by a thing, an interest, a hobby, a Christian hobby, our wife, our husband, our children, our parents probably don't have the same pastimes or interests. They're made differently. They're different than us. And it's good that they are. We're all made different for a cause. So when we let our mark of Christianity be that we are changed by any of the fixings of Christianity, we're keeping anyone from being fixed by Christ. What we must be is not changed because we've got culture, we like the youth group, we like this stuff, we like these activities, we have a great women's group. Wow, these men's barbecues lay it all aside. Unless we are changed by the truth of Christ, none of us will want what any of us are giving. We must, if we're to be giving something to our kids, giving something to our spouse, to our parents, to our coworkers, if they're going to catch a contagious faith from us, it's going to be the truth of Jesus Christ. He alone can save them. And so the mark of our faith must not be that we've got a new activity or even a good group of Christian friends. They'll think it's a fad in you, Mom. Mom, they'll just think that's who you are. It's not who they are. If it's just a group of friends, a group of activities, a kind of pastime. But if your heart has been changed by truth, like Lydia, where she hears, not that Paul's got a new activity for them to do. No, she hasn't seen Paul in his wonderful package of new ministries coming to town. No, it's not any of those things. It's not the great music that accompanied Paul. It was the words he spoke. It says she heeded them in her heart. She was truth changed. And you and I, if we are to have contagious faith to those we love most of all, it must not be about any of the outward things. It's got to be about the only inward thing that can give life. His name is Jesus. So Lydia, this hero of old, it says that she had her heart. She responded in her heart to the words Paul spoke. But what does she do after that? Because no man knows really what happens in the heart, right? Luke, stepping out on a limb here, he says her heart responded to the words Paul spoke. She heeded. Okay, how did Luke have the audacity to say such a thing about Lydia? Would anyone say that about you, mother or father or daughter who's reaching out for your mom and dad? You want your girlfriend, your boyfriend? What is it? How are they going to know that your heart has been truth changed? Well, the answer, of course, is what happens next. So the first mark is being changed by the truth. The first mark of a contagious faith is being changed by truth. Not the fixings, but by the fixer. The fix, Jesus Christ. The second mark is sacrifice. Take a look if you can see the clues to Lydia's sacrifice. It says in that next passage, the verse 15. So this is Acts 16, verse 15. And when Lydia and her household were baptized, she begged us, saying, if you have judged me to be faithful to the Lord, come to my house and stay. And so she persuaded us. Now, put yourself in Lydia's shoes. Many of us women here, sisters in the faith, we have busy lives. We take care of our homes, and many of us work outside of the home as well. That's a lot. Many of us at Gracefield Church have very large families. That's a lot, keeping up with those kids. But probably Lydia had it even harder. I want to point out to you that Lydia lived in a time when the average person lived in a one-room house. Not a one-bedroom house, folks. A one-room house. And she invites Paul and his traveling companions to stay in her home. This is not one guy and his traveling buddy. We don't know exactly at this point how many there were, but sometimes Paul's travel companions are numbered as many as 11. But it changed in size. So sometimes, at worst, she invited 5 or 6 of them over. But it could have been 11 or more. And how do you do that? Because do you think for a second that Lydia was a person with a lot of free time on her hand? Oh, she's retired now. All of her kids are out of the house. No, no. Retirement didn't exist, first of all, back then. Second of all, she was a purple merchant. That means that she had access to purple fabric, and she was distributing that. She was living in this area that was a center for trade. She was this woman who just had a way of doing things well. She has a household. It doesn't say that she doesn't have a house. So she has a household. That means she's probably got kids and a spouse. But even if she didn't have kids and a house, since she says she has a household, we know for sure she's got people who are relying on her in her house. So she's caring for grandma, she's caring for her cousin who's a widow, she's caring for, we don't know how many. She probably had a cook, she probably had people who were serving her and helping her take care of so many people in her family. She's like many of our families here in Augusta County, Rockbridge and Rockingham. When we get together, you're going to tear some walls down because there's like 50 people coming over. And that's what Lydia was like. She was the center of her household. She's working to provide, and yet she somehow realized that there was a bigger opportunity at hand. She wanted to show all these people who know she's very busy, and a lot of people are relying on her. She's the one with bringing home the bacon. She wanted everyone to see, because it was so costly to her, that she would show great sacrifice for the cause of Jesus Christ. So she invites these 5 to 11 men to stay, not for a night, but presumably while they were in this area. They were with her until they're taken off to jail. They're staying in this house. This is a huge sacrifice. Why? It's the sacrifices that you and I share that reveals the heart change. So we know Luke looked at Lydia's life and he says, oh yeah, she's been changed by the truth. How can he say that? Because of the sacrifice that she was willing to make. If she had waited till all the kids are grown up and she's got, her house is all clean and orderly and she's finally got some time. But the fact that she was put out and that it was a huge inconvenience. I mean, it even has, Luke evidently included this detail because he was so impressed by Lydia. This woman, Lydia, has to persuade Paul, please come. And Paul was thinking, there's no room in your house. It'll be hard for you. I mean, you're caring for all these people already. You're very busy. I mean, you come to a Saturday morning prayer time. How do you take time for this? We should stay with somebody who's got more bandwidth. And so Lydia, has to persuade Paul, according to Luke, chapter 16, verse 15. She has to say, no, please, really, I want this. I want to be put out. I want to be inconvenienced. I want it to cost me. Perhaps she was listening when King David said over and over again, I will not offer to the Lord, which costs me nothing. I can't give to God something if it doesn't hurt a little. And in that sacrifice, she was revealing she had been changed. What she had in her life was not just a good bunch of Christian friends or a love for Christian novels. She had been changed by Jesus Christ, and you knew it by her sacrifice. If you are feeling not the same energy you once felt, good. Now you get a chance to show your husband, your kids, your parents, this is real. Jesus is real. If you are feeling disqualified, incapable of sharing Jesus, doing anything for the Lord, good. Now it's a sacrifice. And it's the sacrifice that you make that makes it a contagious faith to others. But if you and I will only talk about the Lord and worship the Lord when the church is well heated and the music is just the way we want it and the pastor is saying the kind of things that we like, and I'm going to go to church as long as that guy's not going to be there and that other guy's not going to be there and that other gal's not going to be there. If we'll only open our Bibles when we're just feeling it, we're only going to worship the Lord when this song really suits me. Oh, I like it when she sings, but not when that one sings. None of this is a contagious faith. If our Christianity is all about the bell choir, don't expect your children to follow. But when your Christianity is all about Christ, there's hope for your kids. There's hope for your mom and dad, a husband and a wife. So Lydia, we love her. She's awesome. But there's another. See, the problem with Lydia is you might think for a moment, well, Lydia, she had her act together. She's a Proverbs 31 woman, so since I'm not going to be able to see my husband or wife come to the Lord. I'm not going to see my parents finally take that step of faith, you might say. Well, you're wrong, because it's not just Lydia who was one of these just amazing people, but it's also the dungeon keeper. There was the guy whose job was to beat up the criminals, throw them in prison, and make sure they stay there. Let's find out his story. So it's in the same chapter, of course, Acts 16, verse 25. I need to give you a little bit of context. So Paul, and at this point, his traveling companion, we know at least was one man named Silas, who was also preaching with Paul. And there was this wonderful thing God did where he cast out a demon from a little girl. And because Paul had mercy on this little girl, stopped what he was doing, commanded this demon to come out of this little girl. So the little girl is free. Now she's finally able to live her life as God gave her a life to live. Okay. Well, the problem was this demon, when the demon was in the girl, it was bringing this little girl's masters money. And so without this demon inside the girl, they lost their money. And so all these problems ensue. The leaders of the town start following the money. They want the money. They need the money. And so these important people are complaining, okay, we just want to shut up the Christians. There's problems. The rulers are starting to get stressed out. People are fighting in the streets. What are we going to do? We're going to go after the Christians. I say it because you should keep very sensitive ears to that. It's happening more and more in America. If you can hear that 2% of the people younger than 36 believe in the Bible, it's going to get worse. So the rulers of this town of Philippi, there's all these problems with the power-wielding folks in town. And so they clamp down on the Christians, namely the people who are preaching the gospel. So Paul and Silas, they take him in this passage of verses 16 through 24. They take them and they beat them with rods. That means they took some kind of metal rod and struck their backs with it. And then numerous times after beating them with these rods, over and over and over, they now throw them into the dungeon. And now we find out what these Christians who have been, Paul and Silas, who have been unjustly beaten, they've had all of their rights taken from them. They've lost when they did nothing wrong. Here's how they respond. Take a look, verse 25. So Acts 16, verse 25. At midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the prisoners were listening. You think you must have read it wrong, Josh. Surely it says Paul and Silas were complaining about how bad their backs hurt. Surely Paul and Silas were complaining about how bad the governor is. Paul and Silas surely were complaining about the injustice in their world. They had a right to. And I don't know that I would hold it against them if they were, because that's natural to do so. But they did something supernatural. Perhaps the greatest supernatural work of all. They lifted praise from the prison. And evidently, when you do so, when you're lifting praise in the valley system you're in, the valley season you're in, evidently, when you do so, people are listening. For these, it says in verse 25, the other prisoners were listening. Why? Probably because they were expecting to hear grimacing and griping and complaining and, well, we didn't win the election. I'm going to tear this city down if the election doesn't go the way I want it to go. We're going to destroy this place. Paul and Silas said, you are better than anything that happens in our government. You have already won on the cross. Nothing else matters. Nothing else could compare to the glory which shall be revealed in us, Paul will teach. His eyes were not on his back with all of the scars. His eyes weren't on those magistrates who ripped him off and stole his justice. His eyes were on Jesus, who's still seated on the throne. He found peace there in the prison. And you and I are all going through, in various forms, we're all going through the valley in different ways. Certainly some of us in the politics gets us bummed out. Certainly some of us in the just our health situation, the pain in our back bums us out. Or the fatigue, it's midnight, shouldn't we be sleeping? No, there's something even better. If we're going to try to save the prisoners around us, the others who are going through the same stuff and messes that we're going through, they're under the same hardship. How can we save them? Well, the answer is praise. If I want to have a contagious faith, I need to not only be changed by truth, not by the fixings, but by the fix, Jesus Christ. I need to make a sacrifice. And in my sacrifice, people see that this faith is real. But I need to also offer praise in the worst and hardest times. And in so doing, people begin to realize this is serious. Ask the Jewish boys of old, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They had their justice taken from them. They refused to bow down for anyone but God Almighty. I think that's something we can all learn from. They refused to bow down, and so they took them in these 3 Jewish young men, and they took them into a furnace and threw them into the furnace. So before they did, they had to tie them up, because it's just natural when people are about to throw you into a fire, you're going to fight. And so the Bible makes very clear detail that they were wrapped in ropes. And so the guards throw them in. Now they had these men, these were full-grown young men. They had to get so close, and the fire was so hot that the soldiers throwing them into the furnace perished from the heat. And so they throw in these, it's almost like people wrapped up in a tomb almost. They're just completely wrapped up in ropes, throw them into the furnace. Now the king at that time, who had by his word thrown these young men into the fire, he looks in there moments later. We don't actually know how long it was. I wonder myself often. It was one of those furnaces probably for melting metal, because he's able to look in there and see what's happening in the fire. And so it's thought that it was like a horizontal entrance into this melting place. People could walk in, and the king is looking into the fire. Perhaps there's like some kind of shelter around the fire where it can just get so hot it can even melt certain metals or alloys. And he sees in there. And he once saw those 3 wrapped bodies thrown into like a big old burning cave. And at some point later on, Daniel, the book of Daniel, says that the king looks in there, and now he sees people walking around. And it's interesting, it says there were ropes that were binding them. There are no more. And the king looks in there, and he sees 1, 2, 3, a 4th person walking around in the fire. How can this be? How many did you throw in there, guys? I threw in 3. Well, I see 4, and the 4th is as the Son of God. So he looks in there, and the Bible is really clear about this. He has to say to them at some point, we don't know how long time had gone by, but at some point he looks in there and he says, hey, you boys, come out of there. Think about that. As soon as I'm cut free of the ropes of my pain, our pain, we get a new system that we like, a new job that we like, a new family. Things are getting better for us, we think. Okay, good, my situation is better. Now I'm getting out of here. Whew, I'm free. I'm going to get out of here. The king didn't do that, did he? The king has to look at those guys and he said, hey, come on, you guys, come on. What were they doing in there? Why did they linger in the fire? Because there was a person that they saw in the fire that was better than the cool of the palace courtyard. It was better for them to be in the flames with Jesus than be in the comfort that the king offered them. And this is that mark that changed that king. He became a believer. Daniel loved to point out that king came to faith. Why? Because that's what happens with the contagious faith. When we are willing to, in the darkest day, the hardest season, in the worst injustice, the deepest pain, say, now I can see Jesus. It's like now that the lights have grown so dark, this place has grown so cold, I'm finally holding on to the Lord. And it's better here where I'm holding on to him than when I was free and comfortable. So in your pain, listen, your wife is watching. In your injustice, they fired you. You're not being treated right. Your vote didn't count. Or that guy was in office and you didn't think he had a right to be there in the first place. Whatever the details may be, your griping sabotages the work of Jesus in your life. But when you and I offer praise instead, oh, that's something. Listen, if your kids, your spouse, your husband, your wife, your parents, they don't need to hear you gripe because, believe me, they hear plenty of it. They have the internet. When they see a Christian gripe, it doesn't make your case. But when a Christian worships God despite the thousands of reasons to gripe, that'll shut their mouth and open their eyes to what God has done in your life. Give your children, give your husband, Give your wife, your parents, an opportunity to believe. Look at the hardest time in your life and determine, I'm just going to thank the Lord. I'm just going to find some reason to thank the Lord. And believe you have them. I can't say this to everybody who's watching right now, but everyone who's here, you have a reason to be grateful. You look here, many of you drove here. Some of you walked. You can walk. Oh, praise the Lord. Some of you are with others. I see you. Wow. You have someone who will go to church with you. You're so blessed. And there's probably 1,000 other reasons. Find those 1,000, 10,000 reasons and lift them up to the Lord. And I think online you can do the same. So they're praying, praising God and praying in a prison, and the prisoners were listening. Well, watch what happens. So the prisoners are listening, it says, verse 26, suddenly, so again, this is Acts 16, verse 26. Suddenly there was a great earthquake, so that the foundation of the prisons were shaken. Immediately all the doors were opened, everyone's chains were loosed. And the keeper of the prison, awaking from sleep and seeing the prison doors open, supposing the prisoners had fled, drew his sword and was about to kill himself. So this is the dungeon keeper, right? It's his job that anybody who goes down into this citadel basement, or we don't know exactly what it was built like. This is 2,000 years ago. They didn't have Instagram back then. There were no cameras. But this is a place for keeping prisoners. And so if the prison door is open, he just knows, of course, those guys are going to run out. They're going to run out, right? Of course they would. Why would they stay in here? He didn't know that they were listening when Paul was praying and worshiping the Lord. They were amazed. Paul's not griping. He must have something real. And so the people stayed put, even though the prison doors were open. And at that time, if you were a dungeon keeper and your prisoner escapes, then they would kill you. Same thing with Jesus when his body was laid in the tomb. All those prison guards were told at that time, if a person runs out of the tomb, if someone opens the tomb door and comes in here while you were on guard, your life is going to be taken. That was the culture of the Roman world. And so this dungeon keeper knew if these prison doors are open, certainly my prisoners are, even though I beat them as well as I could, they ran out. So he's about to kill himself. So he's drawn his sword, is about to kill himself, verse 28. But Paul called with a loud voice, saying, "Do yourself no harm. We are all here." What was Paul thinking? Why didn't he say, "Yeah, do that. I'm so mad at you for beating me last night. My back is never going to heal from this. You had no right. I'm a Roman citizen. You stole my rights." And Paul could have griped. He says, "No, don't harm yourself. Don't harm yourself." When he was willing to be so forgiving to this dungeon keeper, watch what it does. At verse 29. So he called, that's the dungeon keeper, called for a light, ran in, fell down trembling before Paul and Silas. And he brought them out. He says, "Sirs, what must I do to be saved?" This dungeon keeper just knew there's something real in Paul. The way he's worshiping, the way he's just forgiven me. So then, verse 31, so Paul and Silas said, "Well, believe on the Lord Jesus Christ, and you will be saved, you and your household." Then Paul and Silas spoke the word of the Lord to him and to all who were in his house. And so the dungeon keeper took them the same hour of the night, washed their stripes, and immediately he and all his family were baptized. And when he had brought them into his house, he set food before them and rejoiced, having believed in God with all of his household. This dungeon keeper had a contagious faith. Let's break down that. This is the fourth mark. So the first one was being truth changed, making a sacrifice to the Lord, which reveals your faith. So sacrifice. The third was praise, even in a prison, praise. This is the fourth. It's forgiveness. Do you see this element of forgiveness here? So the dungeon keeper, he was the one who beat Paul with the rod, probably permanently maiming him. And yet now he's in a way, like, do you see how he's asking for forgiveness? He's like, okay, can I wash your wounds? Would you like the person who beat you almost to death, washing your wounds? No, anybody else would be better for me, for you. Unless you're just so given over to forgiveness as Paul was. He says, yes, you who beat me, please wash my wounds. Thank you. And this is so interesting because this is a place in the world. Philippi is a location you can go to. And it's thought that people know where approximately this citadel, this place where they would keep the prisoners under the ground. And a lot of places in that part of the world have a cistern where they would collect the water, and the rainwater would be collected. And for a large citadel, all the soldiers and the people who work there would drink their water from the cistern, usually located just outside that citadel. And so it's interesting, the dungeon keeper is washing Paul and Silas's backs that he himself had struck. And then it says his family was baptized there. It probably was the same water from the same cistern. It might have been in the water he washes him. It washes Paul and the wounds that he himself inflicted. And then he takes his own family. Paul now takes the dungeon keeper and baptizes him in that same cistern. Come here, little girl, I'm going to baptize. You believe too? Let's get you baptized. Wife, dear wife, you too believe? Let's get you baptized. The housekeeper, she believes too. Let's get you baptized. How can this be? Because forgiveness does that to a whole family. Jesus said this hard truth in the Sermon on the Mount. He says, listen, I want to read it to you if I can pull it up in my notes. Matthew 5, maybe you should take a look there. It's the first chapter of the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, verses 14 and 15. This is Jesus speaking. If you forgive men their trespasses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. All right. Then verse 15. If you do not forgive men their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses. Now, is Jesus teaching another gospel? I mean, Jesus is the one who says you're saved by faith. He says it like 1,000 times. So do all the apostles. But Jesus just makes the audacious statement that if we do not forgive those who trespass against us, our Father will not forgive us. Are you saying, Jesus, that I have to forgive, and if I don't forgive, God's not forgiving me? He is saying that. That's right. But wait, I thought I was forgiven by trusting in you. Yeah, that's true. They're the same. You see, the first breath you will ever take after being saved and forgiven by God is you will say, Father, forgive them. They don't even know what they do. The first mark, the first growth of faith, the first breath of a new child in the Lord is, Father, forgive them. You see, until we're willing to take that first breath as a Christian and say, Lord, just forgive my wife. Oh, forgive my dad. Oh, forgive my boss. Forgive Mr. President. Forgive the last president. Forgive this new guy. Forgive my kids. Whatever it may be, if we're not willing to take that first breath of the life in Christ, no wonder our kids don't think it's real. But when your husband hears you say, Father, forgive that man who hurt you so badly. When the people you love hear you pronounce forgiveness upon a person who doesn't deserve it at all. He didn't even ask for forgiveness. And yet you're forgiving him. When your loved ones see you give that love to others, they'll see it's supernatural. It's got to be God. God's got to be real. It's the mark of a contagious faith, forgiving those who never will deserve it. Even if they don't ask for it, you don't even like them. I'm confident you can forgive someone you don't like. But the funny thing is, after a while, you start praying for them. I still don't like them. But you still pray for them. Pray for them some more. A couple years go by, you will like them. It's just, I know you might not like it now, but it's actually really good because God makes it so your first breath of faith is forgiveness. But in time, your later breaths will be thankfulness for that person because they gave you a chance to take that first breath of faith. That person, because he or she did that to you, now gave you a chance to exercise your first breath. And in a way, you're so thankful for them. Not thanking for the harm that they did, but thankful for the chance to grow your faith. They say that a butterfly is, it starts its life as a caterpillar, and then it comes to a brand new life. I mean, it's pretty amazing. The DNA is the same, but everything else about this creature is radically different. It used to live on a leaf, and then it kind of like dies, if you would. There's a cocoon around this creature. It's all white and ugly. And basically, its whole body it would look like decaying. It looks like death. It just literally becomes mush. And then something new is born. It's changed into a different creature, a creature that will totally eat different things, live in a different way, even be in a different land. It lives on the air now. It becomes a butterfly. And yet, scientists have told us that if you were to try to help out that butterfly from the cocoon by cutting the cocoon open, it'll never fly. I guess God has made it so that in pushing against the cocoon, the wings are building these muscles so that as it's pushing against the cocoon, it learns to live this life and succeed as a butterfly. And you and I are just the same. When we never let ourselves exercise the forgiveness muscle, we can't learn to live this new life that God has been working and died to give us to live. And that is this life that from the first moment to its last, will be marked by the air of forgiveness. That's what grace is. Christianity isn't singing cool songs. It's not hanging out with nice people. It's really not. It is all about forgiving people who've been mean to you. And they probably didn't even know it. And they certainly don't deserve your forgiveness. But Jesus does. Jesus deserves you forgiving that man, that woman. And so we do it. And it's the proof that Jesus is real. So I want to encourage you, moms and dads, many of you we want to give our children books on the proofs of God. By the way, keep doing it. I think that's helpful. I do it. And that really meant a lot to me as a young man. Hey, moms and dads, listen, many of you want to send your children where they can have some Christian friends. That's good. You should do that. I think that's important. But none of those things are a replacement for you yourself being changed by the gospel. Make your whole life a sacrifice. You yourself praising God when it hurts to do it. And you yourself forgiving the people who most deserve it or who most need it.